Happy 4th of July, 250th anniversary of the United States. Now, I really do remember the 200th anniversary, the bicentennial anniversary, and that was bigger celebrations, at least so far. It wasn't all just around the 4th, it was over that whole year. So, but it is still an achievement. Let me see if what we are doing here. Yes, just checking now to make sure the good old we're up live on the interwebs. That was doing that thing. All right. So yes, happy birthday, United States. But we are playing German Reich. The Nazis, the bad guys, or one of the sets of bad guys. Not the only ones. We're walking this way. Let's here. And hello, Arno. Yes, testing. I see. I'm going to put you playing. Keep going. Thank you, Arno.
Ihre Befehle. Ausrücken.
Destination.
Zuhören. Ihre Befehle. Ihre Befehle.
Sometimes you need the speed even with the disorganization. Okay, one of the other things I want to look at before we start having the clock moving. Let's look. Okay, first now, I'm changing my mind here. Trucks. We are negative trucks, so we don't have enough trucks. Well, let's see what we can do about that. Is already this. Did I set some? That's still trucks, and we don't need trucks there. So let's this. Click on speed. There. Trucks. Just because we're completely negative trucks, I'm not sure, quite honestly, about the mechanics. That if we have a grade ones, I understand to mean that nothing is drawing supplies from there. So, okay, does it use up trucks then? I don't know that it does. So I'm not turning on any trucks at the moment. Let's look now. Okay, we're gonna nearly get that finished. So let's make the more Steel factory. I don't like fully filling up the province if I can just kind of help it. If I don't know what, you know, if I want to throw on something else in there, they're already full. Oh, and I do know that there are ways to expand current plots and things through events, decisions, I should say, maybe more, through national focuses and others, but still. Not going to be started working on until, like, that's going to still take a little bit of time because it's such a big production. That's going to take some time. Here is this if guys party active pain either be partisan damage or bombing damage. You can take a look at a little bit to see, but we've got all these areas, some in the hundreds generally speaking. Turned off some seeing them, but I thought on YouTube I'm allowing it to do the ads, but I thought it was just going to be doing ones that not covering the whole screen, so you'd at least be able to see what was do too much of that, and I'm going to do the repairs will happen naturally. That's a recent capture of Kiev, so we got hundreds of days, 200 plus. We run out of fuel at this rate. We're going to build up more as time goes on. Compliance is a very small percentage in most areas. Those are doing well. These are just barely starting. Supplying in via these guys are having problems. And it looks like we're getting supplies all the way in through to there, so that's good. These will be shifting. Okay. Look at the front line. Got to take that province. Let these guys get a little more organized. The strategic depth a bit deeper. Swamps are hard to push into. We're out of supplies, but still we're going to see about attacking. terribly useful.
Achtung!
One got attack.
Angetreten! Ausrücken! Angetreten! Zuhören! Ausrücken!
These forces look like they're winning their battle there. The pockets. These guys are not maybe doing as well, but I think these guys are not getting much reinforcements or resupply.
Ihre Befehle! Befehle! Angetreten!
Push.
Achtung!
We're getting some supply up via ways to kill Mel, but let's see if we can take that down.
Angetreten!
Let's hit the clock. Go with it.
Angetreten! Befehle! Befehle!
That attack started. We need to wait for that. No.
Bereit!
Fourth. 3 directions with 3 divisions. That's longer. Goes way out. Maybe.
Befehle! Bereit!
They're kind of going against big odds, but how are we doing out at sea? Okay, we sunk a Soviet submarine. I think it had been at like 11. So cool. Got attacked though, no surprise. Because it's, well, I guess it's swampy ground. It does matter.
Befehle!
Yeah, that attack. have a lot of forces. I do want to push
Ihre Befehle.
rail. So okay, this
Bereit zum
division.
Ausrücken.
What's that?
Zuhören.
What?
Angetreten.
Okay, now that we've got a bunch of forces across this road,
Bereit zum
let's put
Ausrücken.
their division into that.
Angetreten.
So that we have overwhelming force at the point of contact. Oh, I remember when that happened. Okay, that's inconclusive. Now we are down to less than 200, so I don't know exactly what happened to all that fuel. Maybe it was fuel. Well, let's look at trade. Did lose a few ships. Let's increase here where we can. Dominated Yugoslavia, or not Yugoslavia, Romania. Fine. Hopefully.
Zuhören. Ausrücken. Zuhören.
Very highly organized. So we're going to do another attack.
Ausrücken.
Since they would do that,
Zuhören. Zuhören.
and forces place. Let's get back down to the bottom of the front here. Looks like they're just about.
Befehle.
One of them is good. Cavalry in
Achtung. Bereit zum Ausrücken.
that rise. If we do have a breakout, we will be moving in rapidly.
Ihre Befehle. Zuhören. Bereit. Achtung.
Hello, Tutovich. How you doing? Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I moved the mic out of my way earlier and I didn't put it back. I hope that is better. I'm not talking terribly loud anyways, but hopefully that is better.
Angetreten.
Okay, well, I'm going to send all of these mobile forces this way.
Befehle. Ausrücken. Angetreten. Bereit zum Ausrücken.
You start crossing the river and you
Ausrücken.
join that attack. Yes, thank you for letting me know. I really like feedback. Yes, I'm glad to hear you're doing good, and thank you for the good wishes. Waiting for this one division to actually escape, because it's not really a pocket, but it would weaken there, and it would give me, I'm just fighting an armored division once they retire. Though they are sending some more forces, so let me push. across the river.
Zuhören. Ausrücken.
Okay, big front here got stalled out. Let's send the 5 infantry divisions that way into the forest. Let's send Hungarian armor up here. And 2 divisions. Armor. Motorized forces that way. Boiling attack that way, just to try to pin all these forces moving for the moment. Okay, yes, you guys move forward. Mountain troops head that way. How many Tiger tanks? Well, that's a very good question because we don't. Oh, keep clicking the wrong spot. I know. Okay, right now we have 108 heavy tanks, and with 74 being Tiger 1. So I would really need to break out just 1 or 2 divisions and add a heavy tank battalion to them if I was going to use them that way, which wouldn't be a bad thing to do. Oh, we're still flying clockwise. You need more trucks, more artillery, more support equipment. I need those. I know, Arno, you're emotionally tied to heavy tanks. But doing on armored cars. Not producing any light tanks, I don't believe. But we still have, okay, we have like 2,000 armored cars. Now, I don't want to completely wreck production lines. How are we doing for trains, logistics? We need just under 200. We have almost 400. So let's cut back on that. Well, moved artillery. Let's do that. Let's do that for support equipment. I would really prefer not to just have one. You know, yes, you can play, and it's not that hard. I'm just not doing it right now. You can play in such a manner that you can plan and micromanage the idea of there with these others this way. To, you know, figure out what division I really want to have heavy armor in for breakouts, so that's where I convert a division over to doing that. You guys attack there, you guys push down there, you guys push up to there. We did break through here, so it looks like we're mostly holding well. Mostly. These guys are Again, let's look at supply. Mostly what I'm looking for right now is... These guys failed in that attack. Let's join that one. Let's join that one. I was looking at railways and 2 supply hubs. If I really want to build a supply hub, now I more want to improve connections here. So like I'm seeing right now, let's come over to here. Let's click on railways. This seems like, because we got 2 running through here, looks like this will be 2 there, but we got 2 to there and 3 to here. So what I want to do here is that and that. So that way at least get me 2 coming up from Germany to here, and then we'll connect into here. I am doing air resupply up into here. Helping, I'm sure, just not anywhere near enough to make it. Okay, stop attacking. You just will do 100% surround, and we'll wait a little while on this as they get even worse in organization and supply. That attack broke off. Let's look back at air battles now that we've had the clock. Hey folk, how you doing? Gamer, can you adjust supply hub motorization? Or yeah, yes. If we don't have any spare trucks is right now the problem. And I did, at the start of the stream, go and look at the supply hubs and ones that were back here that were either not being used, and I don't think they were using trucks, but either not being used or barely used. I went back and went to non-motorization. So yeah, we need to continue with better production here. Okay, so let's look at here. Inconclusive, but we are, generally speaking, winning the air war. We're not even contesting the channel, but I guess there are British forces there. Here, we sunk another sub. Well, now they've gone up to 10. They had been at 6, so whether from some base or just simply shifting around. This is jumping around. It was at 200, well over 200 plus, then down to about here, and then back up to about 200. So I don't. We are importing a bunch from Romania, some from Venezuela, though we're taking a few losses, and we're getting some from Turkey. Kingdom of Iraq would just be very long supply lines. Argentina wouldn't help. Iran wouldn't help. Imperial Japan would be just even worse. Italy, just be across the border, and probably, well, if I could split from half from a, of smaller factory size, so it doesn't take a full factory. And we lost 7, that's why we're losing a bunch coming from. We still have 800, well, yeah, 932, but 888 spare unused convoys, so we can afford some more losses. And I'm just taking the losses and not trying to contest them. They're pushing that way. Let's you in to support that attack. Both of you and both of you to pincer off that, and let's move up the armor this way. Infantry this way. You guys move this way. All of you attack there. Now, okay, well, we will expand our front. You will cross them. You stop attacking into the forest. Doesn't allow them to. Okay, well, yes, I'm probably going to get out of the pocket. Rush the pockets. Here, good. Good, good, good.
Achtung! Ausrücken! Bereit!
Two divisions. Awesome. That way.
Ausrücken!
You can push. Help the Romanians.
Achtung!
It is not best to march through this swamp. We just killed that pocket. So,
Ausrücken! Ausrücken!
east.
Angetreten! Ausrücken! 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 Bereit!
Bereit.
Bereit!
Trains. I was going to say they're all on trains now. No, they're not. Okay, go that way. We can move these. This.
Ausrücken!
Guys, forward. Getting some supplies in, not enough. You join that push. There, you support that push there. We're gonna. I know I keep saying, and I should be trying to surround them, but I'm seeing two here and two here. This one disorganized, but I can hit this one from more sides. We know it's hitting into a urban center. Maybe we can take it. I mean, I know they still have a little bit of ports here, but it would once I get here, I feel that we can hold here at minimum, which would help for the Finns up in the north. Even though is not allowed to join factions. Okay, so it's not allowed from whatever things to join a faction. So it's in the war, but it's not in our faction. All right. Let's push here.
Angetreten. Ausrücken.
Attack there. Hope we get into there before they get properly dug in and whatnot.
Zuhören. Ausrücken. Achtung. Ihre Befehle?
Keep pushing on these, just tie up large groups of troops.
Ihre Befehle? Befehle. Angetreten.
Yellow. Let's take a quick look here. Okay, so we're attacking from two provinces. Good. We have air support. They have enemy air superiority, and they have an intel advantage. So we are currently street fighting, and they are fortified defense. Hopefully we are win that battle. So if we can take Stalingrad, like I said, or Leningrad up there. Stalingrad's down here, I know. Just they're all evil people.
Angetreten. Achtung.
Now maybe, and I know Folk and Arno to a degree, you know, or something of a, you know, thinkers. This is gamer, and as I'm playing this, you know, I'm having all kinds of different thoughts. But recently, in the last day or two, Elon Musk tweeted after, I think it was yesterday or whatever, but just very recently, Mandami, who I fully support. I want to say that Gamer 1745 fully supports Mandami, the mayor of New York City. If you don't know who I'm talking about, I am cheering on everything that I hear he's doing. He is going to, you know, give us the New York City that we want to have, which will eventually be walled off, and we just dump all of our malcontents into. But Elon Musk, you know, and he, I think in his speech or something, he may have mentioned Mandami in his little talk. He may have mentioned Elon Musk or something, but Elon Musk said, you know, something like he's a, you know, Elon's a builder, but Mandami is a taker. He's never built a single thing in his life, produced anything in his life. You know, never was a business owner or even like an employee who does things. You know, even if you go, oh well, you have to be, you know, which you don't really, but you have to be able to take the risks to start a business. Yeah, I know, but people can still be an employee who opens a new store, you know, even for, you know, a McDonald's or something like that. That's a big chain. There's still guys that go through the process of maybe not, you know, managing the construction of, but setting up a new McDonald's somewhere, in the process of hiring people and getting, you know, even though McDonald's I know has some school training that they send some employees to, but you also hire and train employees in the store itself, you know. So, you know, he's never done anything like that. So he's, you know, you don't have to be in a position of privilege to have some of these experiences. But what is it? Just pure envy, or what is it in these people? And obviously it's, I don't know Mandami. Again, hooray for Mandami. Mandani. Oh, Ma'am Don, not Donnie. Okay, thank you. Not me, but me. Okay, thank you, folk. We got a bot over on Twitch. Arno, if you want to smack it down. Ma'am Danny. Zorhan. You know, and he, you know, at that level, and I know it's the mayor of New York, but at that level, you've got to be something of a schemer, etc., etc., etc. Sometimes you're just somebody's pure figurehead, but I don't think he is. So, and I truly believe he has viewpoints and isn't just exploiting the system. But I think his viewpoints are antithetical to the U.S. generally speaking. And that means if you're, because I know we have people that are not native English speakers or whatever, but that means you are operating in a way that you want to destroy what we think of as America. So, drive. And it's good to see there's nobody there, so let's drive like that. So we burst out. And we will try to pin those troops that are moving. We will attack there. Now, I don't know what Mandamni's held views are. Is it, some of it, I believe he is something of an Islamicist. But even that could be a cynical pose. Because I know of, like, the Ba'athist Party was something of a socialist party. I don't know whether it was more fascist, more national socialist, or more just socialist. That was coming out of the Arabic world, who I think many of them vaguely believed in a god, but were not strict adherents at all. So maybe to a point of being a complete secularist, that there is no god. If you win, oh, hello, HOI IV General. If you win Barbarossa, will you establish a Reichskommissar? I haven't thought that far ahead. I do have the, this here to be able to, in theory. So I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead, like I say. So, like I was saying, the Baathists and some of these other groups, from somewhere between secularists, believing that there is no higher power, whatever you want to call it, to believing that there is a higher power, but Muhammad or whoever is just, some sort of delusional person somewhat and out in the desert, so we don't need to follow his views, but we're, sort of religious and we're Arabic and whatnot. So there are definitely those types out there, who would care nothing about other than the show for public consumption or something. The show of going on Hajj to Mecca or anything like that. Doesn't pray multiple times a day and, whatever. So there are those types. And then there are rather religious types, but they're not Marxists in the sense of Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, that are, total secularists, religion is the opiate of masses. No, they are religious, whatever their sort of precise religion may vary a bit, but they are religious, but they're also a type of socialists in their religion, and they may be also, even though religious, they may not be medieval in their practices of religion, meaning they see themselves as a modernist, just sort of as a hello, sure, just because you're high doesn't mean you have, just because you're high doesn't mean you have any ground. Just 'cause you're high doesn't mean oh, I have the high ground. Oh. Well, I'm just talking about Arno. I got to read up. Okay, now I understand the quote from the start, which Revenge of the Sith or whatever. Yes. I good friend who I've lost track with him, but Jewish, very good friend. And even as he was getting older, was studying more Judaism and getting a little bit more religious. But he loved bacon and pork products, and he looked at all those dietary laws as simply, yeah, that's a really good idea when you're in the Middle Ages and and your religious leaders are also your most educated leaders, so them giving you, how to handle foods and whatnot, good solid advice. But he didn't, as deeply as he was getting in older age more religious, he wasn't anywhere going down the path of that these dietary laws have any real religious value or any God making them. It's just sensible laws that now that we have refrigeration and other things, pasteurization and whatever, there's no need to follow. So yes, you can be a quite religious person, but look at things like that as being unnecessary or even counterproductive in today's world. So, Ma'am Danny might be something like that, might be quite religious and socialist. I just don't see him really being actually for trans and gay stuff, but I may be wrong. I think he's cynically using those types of fringe elements to his advantage. So I will grant that he can, again, have very sincere belief systems and not just an evil manipulator that will say what he thinks will get him in power so that he's in power. And he's just following whatever path to get to power. He might be that. I don't know. Honestly, I really don't. But there's also a huge number of people behind him that seems to believe that they deserve, that it is right, that it is correct. Hey, IKB. Gamer only reading half the chat, confirm. No, actually I was starting sort of from the bottom and reading up as opposed to starting at the top and reading down, so I got to your chat thing and I didn't get its context until I read up the next one and saw its context. You gotta love Lum. The way his mind works, it's so weird and twisted. Yeah. So why do people feel that it is somehow right and just to tax people that have something more than you have. Why does that feel... And we can look all the way back to at least the Bolshevik revolutions, and I think, again, another person who had basically nothing in his whole life was Karl Marx. He was always, my understanding, and I'm very far from a expert on his life, but my understanding was he was always getting outside, people supporting his research or whatever, not somehow he even inherited money or anything like that. Why they think they and people are entitled, and I want to leave out just the trillionaires now. I know there's only one, and hey, the first trillionaire out in the world is an African American, so we now know that America is no longer racist or unequal to minority groups, because an African American is the first trillionaire in the world. Now, and this is what, and there was a AI skit with some of, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and whoever that think that that there's some big, room full of money that Elon Musk has. I'm sure he has, and I may be wrong about this, $1 million or $2 million. But I don't know that Elon Musk even has $1 million. In that he very well may be in debt. I mean, he may have $10 million in the bank and personally have $20 million in debt. So yeah, he sort of has the money, but he is in debt. It's just, paying it off. But he's a trillionaire in the value of, as evaluated, though often in cases he's contractually can't maybe sell a lot of his personal ownership in some of these companies and whatnot. And I know there's controversy over his big pay package, and he might. But sometimes some of these very rich people don't have a lot of money. Actual money, and that, but the idea that's just somehow that you can just tax Elon Musk and have the government get money. There's not necessarily any money there at scale. Oh, well, he should sell some of his shares. Well, what happens when you sell your shares? You give up control. And if somebody else could do this build SpaceX, why haven't they? And some of the ladies on The View somewhat recently, not very recently, but, well, there shouldn't be SpaceX. We already have NASA. What's all this SpaceX needing? Well, stupid people that are allowed to be on television. NASA, in about a year, does somewhere between 5 and 10 rocket launches to orbit. In the last year or so, SpaceX has done 165 launches to orbit. Rocket launches to orbit. NASA has no functional ability, and they would say, well, if you can afford $25 trillion or whatever, $25 billion, $25 million for rockets, you can afford 10 times as much for poor people around the world, these skin takers. However much you're putting in, that you put into NASA, you can always double it or more into really needful products, or not products, but programs. like still hear, oh, hey, how big is the defense budget? Well, that's just the defense budget, and you're just defending yourself against communists who are the really good guys, actually just maybe misguided. But yeah, so more money to poor people. However much, it's always, unless the budget to the poor people more than doubles defense spending, where we have our priorities all wrong. And they sell these to people who buy this. But yeah, so why is there a mentality? And I'll get back and read the chat. And I would really love, why is this mentality that people feel the right and just enough of taking what somebody else has? Do they have a right to one of my monitors here because I have more than one monitor and somebody doesn't have a monitor? How do they really believe that they have the right to take from somebody else? And again, we're leaving out the, the billionaires and trillionaires, because that's, but all of the, and people, because of inflation, and you may not realize this, you can sell a middle class house in a beach city, not on the beach, God no, a few miles or kilometers in from the beach, but in a beach city in California. Now, it does for you third worlders out there, and I know I have some third worlders. I know IKB's a third worlder. He lives in England, so he's a third worlder. So I know the third worlders, having central air conditioning, in particular, not just window air conditioning. Central air conditioning, is a luxury item. So to them, maybe the home would be a luxury item. But because of inflation and because of the various demands, you can sell one of those houses and get $1 million for all of them. There's going to be some taxes on all of that, so you're actually going to get a bit less than $1 million. But yeah, $1 million for what was a middle class home. And so, and yes, I did see, and I will get all the chat here, IKB's cash poor, asset rich. Yes. So you can be if you're just talking about assets, I've known a lot of people that if they still own that home free and clear, they're a millionaire in that sense. Not that they have millions of dollars or they make $1 million a year. It's just they have an asset of $1 million and they can sell it. They sell the house. Then what are they going to do? Sort of like me, move out of the state because they can't afford to live in it anymore. But so to anybody, you think, oh, well, they've got $1 million. Well, $1 million ain't what it used to be. Period. From just inflation. It's like what $100,000 or something was 20 years ago. And so your expectation, oh, somebody has $1 million. Yeah, it's sort of like having $100,000 or, $1 million worth of assets. And, oh, okay, let's say you don't live in California. You'd live in, like where I do, in Arizona. And trust me, within visual sight of my home, there's $1 million homes. Some are very nice, some are just nice. And some are, well less, less than a third of $1 million or whatever. So yeah, you can have $1 million in between cash and assets and whatnot. But that ain't rich anymore, people. So the mere and trust me, the mere fact that somebody has $1 million in assets, between cash, maybe some stock investments or something like that, and whether they own the home free and clear or can, get a mortgage on that home to buy something else, they may have $1 million, $1 million to, even if they had owned a home free and clear, get a loan out and buy a second home as an investment home to rent out or something like that. But somebody with $1 million of assets, that ain't rich. Not even, Hello, Heavenly Spirit of Psalm. How you doing? I'll get to the chat in a moment, everybody. So a millionaire, because it used to be Bernie Sanders, a millionaire and a billion, millionaires and billionaires, and a millionaire, you know, that you have is not America rich. It's probably rich in Zimbabwe. If you have actual assets that are yours in one form or another, that is not taken, taxed, or whatever by the government into unexistence, basically you're part of the corrupt clique that runs Zimbabwe's government, then yeah, you're rich in Zimbabwe. Okay, you are. But not in America. So, millionaire stuff, and I know there's lots of people out there that have nowhere near $1 million in assets, but a millionaire is not rich. A millionaire does not buy you or maybe just buys you a nice family home, and I'm not talking, you know, a huge family. If you want to have grandma or grandpa or somebody living there along with your kids, you're going to be awfully tight and crowded, at least not for, you know, some parts of the world, including people that come from other parts of the world that are living in America. But you're going to be, you know, sort of crowded on American standards. And you're going to, with that, you're still going to have to go to work every day. And your wife is probably going to have to go to work to be able to support that, even though you have $1 million in assets. You can't just live on $1 million. So that ain't rich. If you've got to go to work like at a grocery store kind of work, and you've got $1 million in assets, you ain't rich, people. You ain't rich in the society in which you live. You know. Again, yes, American exceptionalism, first world problems. Again, hi to my third worlder friends in Europe who don't even have air conditioning. God, how do you live? I know you're all so fucking full of yourselves that somehow you think you're an advanced people, but how do you justify, oh, my Norwegian friend, oh, well, it's mostly very cool. I don't fucking care if it's one day a year. Buy a $150 window air conditioner to be able to turn it on one day a year. It's not a lot, and trust me, I know enough that you would use it more than one day a year. It's maybe one day or 10 days a year that it's sweltering hot or something that you actually complain about. But if power was cheap, like it should be, even if you live in northern Norway, no, I've never been up there in summer, but I do believe if you live in northern Norway, yeah, through a good chunk of the summer, you would actually use your air conditioner if it was cheap. And it can just be a window one. Oh, it's unsightly. Fuck that. It's nice to have an air conditioner. So you are, and I know people like folk, and oh, yes, Elizabeth saying, God bless air conditioning. Yes. Willis Carrier, the American and that's probably why Europeans hate it, because it's an American invention. Willis Carrier Company still exists. I think more or less contiguous from him founding it. And not just somebody using the branding name, but I think it's continued on. For those who don't know, and sometimes they mistake, oh, well, third world is like backwards. Actually, technically, no. Third world is not necessarily backwards. There was the first world, which was, thought to be the most advanced, and not all of the members of the first world were super advanced, but they included countries like Japan, so it isn't just the Western world, because Japan, trust me, people, it ain't Western. It's modern, and there's some Western influences in, they play baseball, and things like that. There's some Western influences in Japan, but Japan is not a Western country. Okay? They don't want to be a Western country. Oh, they're sort of falling in love with American things right now again, barbecue and guns and whatnot. But trust me, the Japanese people don't want to actually become Americans. You know, they want to celebrate America. They want to, you know, a few of the American perks like barbecue or, you know, and food and guns and a few other things like that. Yes, but they don't want to be America. Even the idealized version of America. I'm not, because you may go, well, America's not doing so great or something. Yeah, we have our problems, but they don't even want to be the idealized. So, but it was the first world, which included Europe. Europe is retrograded. Because when I was back in the late 80s and in college, one of my professors was Danish. And, you know, had lived more than 10 years in the U.S. I think he was a U.S. citizen, but I'm not absolutely sure about that. But he knew, because of reactions of stuff, that in Denmark, in the 1970s, they were still using animal transport, because he was showing us slides and whatnot. In Denmark, for farming, that a farm cart with rubber, you know, inflatable tires on it was being pulled by, you know, a donkey or something. And yes, in 1970s, all Americans looked at that and think, you're fucking taking on a cart in the 1970s. Now, remember, this is the late 80s, so it's, for all of the college students, it's in living memory. You know, like 10 years before. Taking food into a urban environment, Copenhagen or something, on a cart from your farm, that you're using farm animals to, you know, as a farming thing, where Americans have horses as hobbies on ranches. The horses are there for fun. You don't need to use horses for ranching. You can have, you know, quad bikes and whatnot that are driving around, and jeeps and pickup trucks and whatever, and ranch. Because people, you know how you round up cattle? You honk your horn. It's all you can do a roundup just simply by honking the horn on your car. It's as easy as that. And I know this because my grandfather had a ranch. And what they would do is they'd have a pickup truck with some bales of hay on it because they were overgrazing. He was actually when I was there, he was leasing his land out. He had given up. Actually, he had some horses there because hobby horses. Wasn't making any money on them. God, no. I mean, just a few to ride around on. But they would, you know, so overgrazing, so they would have bales of alfalfa, you might call them hay. Not straw, bales of straw, but bales of hay. Straw is edible, but not very nutritious for a herbivore. You still have bales of straw to, like, put down in stables to help muck out, you know, absorb the liquid elements that come out of a horse or a cow or whatever. So there is reasons to just get straw, but an alfalfa type hay type thing. Hay is, I believe, is just sort of the dried version of grasses. I think is technically the term for it. You drive around with one of those, or maybe a few of those in the back of the pickup truck, honk their horn, snip the wires that bail it up, and then throw the hay off the back of the pickup truck. And keep the wires, and, you know, so keeping the place clean. And the cattle would come and eat the hay. Well, as 20-somethings on the ranch, and they would do that several places, you know, in a valley, and the cows would come to it. You could be in a regular car or a Jeep or whatever, honk your horn, you know, something that there's obviously no hay around. They would all gather around and they could realize what's the back and what's the front, even if it wasn't a pickup truck, and come to the back of the vehicle. And then you can drive 100 feet and honk your horn again, and they'll keep coming to you. The same vehicle, and there's never any hay. There's no hay on it. They can all see that there's no hay, but the Pavlovian dog aspect. So you can easily round up your cattle and just move them along, and they keep following your vehicle, and just move it into a corrals or whatever, to, if you want to check them for ticks, or you want to, they know back in the day, back then they hadn't yet done the ear tags. They were still branding or whatever, or sort them out, and which ones are going to go to market and which ones were staying. So you could easily get them. So you don't need horses to do cattle if you sort of prep them by periodically going out there and honking your horn and throwing hay off of the back of your vehicle. They will follow your vehicle. So you don't need, on a ranch, and this was back in the early 80s into the 90s that I was there, and for more than a decade, well more than a decade, you don't need horses on a ranch. It's ranchers who have horses do it for fun. They don't do it for any sort of, and they may practically use the horses, but they do it because it's fun, and it may be practical, but they don't use the horses and drive the cattle into to town, like on a cattle drive. And you can see the movie, great movie, City Slickers, that they got, it's just a dude ranch that are doing that. No, you just have trucks that you drive there that pull trailers that you load cattle on, and you drive them wherever, even if you're taking them to a stockyard and putting them on trains to haul them across America to wherever they're going to be slaughtered or something. So you don't need animals to do any sort of farming. But in the 1970s, it was still maybe not the most. There's maybe more tractors and pickup trucks or the equivalent in Denmark, but they were still using animals. So that's backward people. But that was sort of the first world. The second world, which is often not mentioned now, that was what was in essence the Warsaw Pact. Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. Everywhere else was the third world. Often, yes, backward, but could, and India definitely is backward, but some of the places might also be termed the non-aligned world. And the third world, was definitely a gradient from complete shitholes to decent enough places that were not technically advanced. But yes, Europe that you don't commonly have, and you believe somehow that air conditioning is used to make silage from feed for their animals. I'm just looking to see that. Not out here in the West, because I have seen what silage is, a very good series that's made in Britain. I don't know what company, TV making company, whether it was the BBC or ITV or whatever. Wartime Farm, which is sort of a looks at what World War II, and it's a very, very informative sort of series, is sort of a living history sort of TV experiment of how the farmers worked in Britain, and that's where I found out about silage. From that needs sort of a much more moister environment, which we do not have basically in the American West, because even where you're in the Pacific Northwest, it rains a lot, but it's not maybe moist enough except for just really right on the coast, literally right on the coast, because about half of Oregon and Washington State that you may think of, and I have been up there, that is a rainforest. It's a temperate, it's not a tropical, it's a temperate rainforest, but it gets huge amounts of rain. They all have a mountain range that bumps the clouds up, and that's why it dumps all the rain right there, that it goes into not necessarily desert, but an arid, including arid forests. We have those also down in the Southwest, things that, that are filled with pine trees and other, some annual and some deciduous trees that are truly, everyone would agree it's a forest, but it's arid. And here in Arizona, we also have monsoons, and we're getting close to the monsoon season within a week or two. It pulls up huge, it's actually the heat here, pulls up huge amounts of water being dumped from the Gulf of America now, used to be Gulf of Mexico, dumps in here. huge amounts, or coming up from Baja, the bay down there, dumping huge amounts of water. And so during that while it's monsooning, it is, you know, more than 100% humidity, and you can barely even walk outside. But a day or two later, everything's drying back up, and then we'll have another day or two of monsooning, and then it'll dry up, and then So no, we don't do silage out here with ranching. I don't know if they do it like in the northeast or even the south, where it is humid enough, and do the silage thing. I don't know if that's, and I don't even know if it's environmentally difficult to make. But and ranching wouldn't. That's too labor intensive, kind of thing. I just don't know if there's ever really been the need, meaning it's bountiful enough, and the demands on the cattle that you don't need to try, just let the old, the old bits of whatever just go to waste. It just doesn't, you don't need it. So I don't know whether it's needed, but okay. So yeah, this, and I will get, because I would, why people think they do, and this is what sort of got me down this path. And it's not just, oh, hey, we should take care of, and that was always, at least in America, how the left was sold as, yeah, there are people in need, right? That there are people genuinely in need. And they're, again, the old Democratic Party, that of Bill Clinton and before, it was never that we should tax the rich as much as we think we need to do it. No, we should lightly tax them, and tax the not rich, but the people that have, positive incomes, lightly. Not just for things like, national defense and having our Army, Navy, and Air Force and all that kind of stuff, and build roads and that kind of thing that everybody benefits from. So you're sharing out the burden of maintaining, security of the state and all that, but redistributing it to some needy people, that you have that as a, and that was always, for those truly needy. But the idea that we see in New York that the subway should be free, the buses should be free, all of these things should be free, and we should just find ways of confiscating wealth from people who have wealth. And I do also believe that these people, not just the guys at the top, believe that they want to bankrupt things like landlords, so that either the housing, the individual apartments, not the whole apartment building, either the individual apartments are given over as ownership to an individual or family or whatever, or whether that building should be publicly owned by the government, and whether free or just low rent. Why do they think that there should be any justice to that? That somehow that, by doing that, in and of itself is justice. I don't get why people think. Is it just, are they indoctrinated? Or is there just some genetic thing? Or is it just envy of people who have? And so they hate, and they're just going after through any means available, to go after the people who have something because they don't have it. And I don't know. And it's not I have sort of upgraded, I have a rather nice, it's still the same dimensions of screen that you're seeing on the video. Just mainly I did that so, I didn't do a widescreen monitor, meaning because I wanted to have my main monitor for full screen use for making videos and streams. But it is, I don't know its specs and whatnot, but it is a nice monitor, the one that I stare at. I have some extra ones here that at least one of them, maybe two of them, but one of them for sure was dumpster dived for, from an e-waste dumpster, but still a dumpster. So yeah, don't think that my 4 monitors are all, and one of my monitors was my older, nice monitor, but not nearly as nice as my new one. So it's not like, oh my god, Gamer has 4 super nice monitors. No. I got an e-waste monitor, another sort of maybe e-waste, maybe not, I'm not sure. So I sort of got it from my dad. But definitely sort of a used, may have come from a, a thrift, charity thrift shop monitor. And my old main monitor and my new nice but main monitor, but not the most expensive thing. And now I don't know nowadays because of all of the computer equipment going up more expensive. So, I have some nice things, but trust me, it's not anything super great. So just because I have that and maybe you don't, and yeah, I have a, what is it, 3080 Ti video card, and I know they're up to 50 series video cards, so I have several generations old video card, and maybe you don't even have a, maybe you're at a 1080 whatever video card or something in your computer that's not as nice as mine. But do you somehow deserve better computer equipment, and somehow maybe not taking my equipment away from me, but taxing me somehow, so to redistribute it so you have more? Do you really think? Why would you think that? However nice my computer equipment is, if it was all gold plated, why? I don't know. Okay, I'd love to see your feedback. So I'm going to now scroll way back up on the chat and see how everybody's doing. And yes, hi Toy Jet. I'm seeing is okay. Okay, long ways up here. Gas. Politicians only saying what people want to hear to get them in power. Crazy. Yeah, and that's, I don't know. There's definitely, I would say, let me get to a better screen here, and then I'll tab out so it won't look so bad while I'm reading the chat. There are definitely some people on the right, I believe, that do that, say what they think will get them elected or whatever. But I would say, at least on the American right, there are more people that are saying hard truths than, and trying to, maintain power than just saying what they say. So I see that more on the left, but maybe that's just my, and IKB is saying greed and envy is to that. And Elizabeth, if you tax the company, the consumer makes up for the loss. Well, or even if you don't, company X, whatever it is, and could be the X company, Elon Musk, if you tax them more, even if they don't raise the prices, for a SpaceX launch or for the satellites, Starlink, even if you don't charge the customer more for Starlink, if you tax them more, it means they cannot expand as fast. So, putting more satellites up or whatever you're trying to expand Starlink, as well as, yes, even if they were to take that money out of the company and give it to the shareholders, whether that's an individual person or a million average Americans who own, a few shares in some company, they can't reinvest it in something, including, it was actually 2 days ago, I was hanging out with my gun dealer friend. He's actually a friend, not any. I met him through him being one of the local shop owners here, but we've become friends and actually, go shooting and a couple other things outside of just being in his shop. But he's sort of one of my dealers for gun stuff. And his not unique, but his selling thing, and he's an owner operator. He has no permanent other employees. He has part-timers / intern types. Is that he's also a gunsmith, and somebody was coming in with having trouble getting their .22 caliber rifle back together and had broken a spring and had gotten a new one and is afraid of breaking the new one and putting it together. So, so that person is paying, an owner operator in a little gun store because he has extra money, because he's not needing to use it for food, or whether it's paying off a loan for if he owns the home, or if he's renting a home, he's not having to have to pay that. He has extra money to have a gun repaired. And yeah, it's not, a big investment for, a business. It's just able to do that invest that keeps a small gun shop, keeps a person employed. And so, yeah, if keeping taxes lower keeps that money moving through the economy, even if it is particularly pulled out of a particular business, as a profit thing, and not just used as expansion. So yeah, taxing doesn't always require that you would simply pass that along to the consumer, but you very well may. I'm not saying it isn't or you don't. I'm just saying it doesn't require that, but that does definitely see a slowing down of the economy overall, which is bad. And what Jordan Peterson, which I have not read any of his books, I've seen his interview, but I did read his fairly long X post today on the 4th of July, and he mentions that he's living now again in the U.S., but he's a Canadian. And you have to remember, Canadians are defined as Americans who rejected the United States. Prior to World War II, 80 to 90% of them were either actual refugees from the 13 colonies that got their independence, or their descendants. It might be mixed descendants, with other newer people coming from Britain, but because right after in the mid 1780s, I think, what is it, 1782 or 83, that Britain and the Paris Treaty, one of many, I'm sure, treaties of Paris, but the Treaty of Paris was signed between the 13 rebellious colonies and Britain, that Britain acknowledges that they were actually independent countries. We declared it in 1776 on, July 4th, 1776, which I'm going to watch later today after the stream, the musical done back, I think, in 1770 or 1974, but called 1776, that's sort of a musical around the process of agreeing to the Declaration of Independence, and a thing I read which said about somewhere between a third and half of the colonies had already individually declared their independence. But that was those 13 colonies all together as one body declaring their independence. Well, even at that point, was nowhere near the idea that they were all making up one nation. They were 13 colonies that might ended up being 13 nations. But they did stay together, obviously, and with the Civil War keeping them together. But yes, so I will be watching that. Very good. I mean, the musical part. Some of the songs are funny, but highly recommend that if you want to. It's sort of an annual tradition it's become for me to watch the movie. But it does, in a humorous way, look at basically all of the issues, including things like slavery. It's addressed in the movie, and what those people at that time, including pro-slavery people at that time understood those issues, and why abolitionists like Franklin, and he is Benjamin Franklin, he is, I think, the first one that sets up an abolitionist society in Americas, anywhere in America, not just in the United States, but in the Americas, North and South. He is the first one that establishes a abolitionist society. And others that may or may not have joined it, but, like Samuel Adams from northern states that were not slave colonies or whatever, that were not pro-slavery, but how they were dealing with their new. The idea was that they were going to stay together, but that still staying together post the Revolutionary War was still something a bit more up to the different state governments and how that was going to work out. Was it actually going to be a nation or multiple nations? And the Declaration of Independence does not address that. I don't think. I don't know. I don't have it all memorized. But address that in particular, that if it is going to be a nation or not, as in singular. But how they look. They do talk in the musical as a new nation, but how it's just going to work out is still to be defined, and how they were dealing with slavery. So it's not just people that didn't care. No, they were actually dedicated abolitionists that do go down the process and allow, and through the different early constitutions, because the Constitution that we have now is actually our second one. It's about 10 years later in 1793 that we adopt our current Constitution that allowed slavery. It doesn't explicitly allow slavery. I mean, it doesn't say you can have it, but doesn't say you can't have it either. Later on, they do that. They say that, sort of. You can still have slavery in America. We can still do it. But there's got to be a reason for the slavery, and it's not generational. Meaning you can enslave a criminal. You can give, oh, hey, you, criminal, you're convicted of a crime. We're going to give you 10 years of hard labor or something like that. And in theory, I could sell, as the government, sell that hard labor contract off to an individual or corporation. It doesn't happen. Corrupt kind of things that even though you're a prisoner of the state, and not just working for the state like cleaning the sides of roads, but actually hired out people to work for, hey, build my house for me. Now, that's mostly gone away, I believe, but not so long ago, back in the 60s, there were places that you might very well even have, a government guard standing around while people are doing labor at something for that. So it's sort of, and that's more corrupt as in local laws, but that is not against our current Constitution. So we can, whether for life or temporarily, if there's a cause, that's why whatever the amendment is, I don't remember numbers well, that some people want to repeal that. They don't mean they want to repeal it and allow slavery. They want to repeal at least the part of the amendment that allows for slavery for a particular cause. Again, like being convicted of a crime or something. So we still have that in America. But it's not just, how all this works out. So highly recommend the movie if you want to watch a 2-hour plus humorous look at the process of not just of writing it, but negotiating with the peoples of the different, the representatives of the different colonies. Because early on with the Continental Congress, they're just, one, managing the war, trying to fund it and whatnot, and two, trying to maybe negotiate a settlement with the crown. And early on, even though, like I say, early on in 1774, 75, you very well may have been able to have a parliamentary, royal, whatever group come over and negotiate with the colonists and go, hey, okay, we'll set up a, equivalent of status that you're, part of the British Empire, but you're going to be internally self-governing, sort of, like when there was the active union of crowns in, what was it, 17, or no, it was before, yeah, the union of crowns, but not the union of, not the current United Kingdom creation, and maybe IKB remembers, I don't know, not that he has to look it up, but when I'm not good with dates, of the Union of Crowns, when Scotland and England were still 100% in different governments and had their 100% own armies. Scotland basically didn't have a navy, but England did. But they were, their own, truly their own governments, that just same person as king. And that's basically the way it was in, during the English Civil War period. Later on, they get the union, the active union that brings the two nations together, though still leaves Scotland a bit with its own laws and some of its own stuff. When you could have easily negotiated early enough in the process of the war, of the rebellion, you could have negotiated a settlement that kept those colonies as a core part of the British Empire, if you will, but, established equivalent of a colony's version of the English Parliament or something, and allow them to be internally self-governing. Whether that would have eventually slipped into like a modern-day Australia or Canada, or had stayed more a core, single army, single sort of navy and that kind of stuff, I don't know, but there was a point that there could have been a settlement. That the firebrands for independence would have been a true minority. But by, obviously, 1776, all these guys have had enough of it and declared, not just said, but declared their independence. So, yeah. Okay, continue. And Lum says, I'm no politician, and I highly doubt my random bullshit I spew is of any use. Well, but it's fun to listen to, Lum. And you can catch Lum's often, not always, but often on Sunday, actual voice of his random bullshit while playing War Thunder. Making more sense than most politicians do. Well, yeah, because most politicians are demented. Not that Lum makes sense. And IQB, my understanding is Marx was supported by money he begged off friends and family. Yeah, that's my understanding. And, that in and of itself is not a bad thing. Because if you want to be a historical researcher, if you want to be a thinker, yeah, maybe you can publish books that would sell enough, or make YouTube videos that would get enough viewers. Mine don't. I mean, I make a pizza or two a month, even with my low publishing schedule, but, I still make money off my old videos and whatnot. Not huge amounts. Again, nothing to be jealous over, but yeah, it's a pizza or two a month. Yeah, there are ways, like I say, even, back then publishing books, in the 19th century or something. But even then, that could be a pretty poor income. So, and if, and one of the ways of sort of begging is to get, in a modern sense, but even back then, is get a job at a university, or that you may do some teaching, but also do a lot of other pondering, thinking, and whatnot, or a think tank or something, that there are ways of sort of having a job, but it's also sort of like begging for money. So, and we want to have thinkers, not necessarily Marxist types, but thinkers that are supported. So getting supported by others, but it does, yes, confirm my belief that Marx was never, it wasn't like, oh, hey, I've worked for 5 or 10 years in the general work. It doesn't like even be an ownership kind of thing, but just, actually worked at something, had a job that he was required to do to support himself. my understanding is Marx never even has that. It's always either friends and or family that's allowing him to do it. So he never had that, and maybe been very short of money at times, but he never had that responsibility of, hey, I worked a day in my life doing whatever, even, being a store clerk or because scribblers back then, people filling out ledgers and all there, because computers, doing all that kind of busy paperwork that may or may not be necessary. He never, to my knowledge, he never had a job, and he may have briefly, I don't know of any, of having to have a job that he was even for a time supporting himself. So, which I do think goes into Marx's viewpoint on things, including, even though it is the 19th century and we are really actively starting the Industrial Revolution, he still sees economies in a pre-industrial world in which there's virtually no wealth creation, and what wealth creation there is done by the rich, and that most all wealth is either done literally by your labor, making shoes, hand making shoes, or you out farming with an animal. And so, yes, some were higher levels that employed people to make shoes with their hands or farm their fields for them. But wealth was a static thing. It wasn't a growth thing. No, though the Industrial Revolution was happening, and I don't honestly know Marx, who I think is mostly living in London. And yes, I actually did study briefly for a few months when I was in Britain. I had a temporary pass to the British Library. I know they've moved to it. They still have the old historical building that's there, but that was the main reading room at the time. So I forget where it was, but they do have marked out the little plaque of the desk that Karl Marx normally sat at, and the actual desk. I mean, it's sort of built-in furniture, but where he normally was. And no, I didn't study at that one, but I have studied at the British Library years ago. Just ultimately, probably less than a few weeks of being in there studying, but I was in and out of London at the time, coming down doing some study. So I've studied in that same very nice domed room that's at the center of the British Library. I know they've moved to a new building somewhere else in London. It's post my time. I've not even seen that building in person. I've seen video, but yeah, So yeah, so with Marx, I don't know that he, wasn't poor at times, but he never works to support himself. Oh, and I don't know that if he ever really left that sort of central London, if you will. I just don't know, to go see what is mostly up in the north at that time, particularly the industrialization. I don't know how much he saw of wealth creation like that. Not that he was unaware of it, but seeing it, examining it in person, changes your perspective. And I don't know. And of course, it would often look like, and it was very much at start, even if somebody has an idea like Watt and the steam engine, he's selling the engines, and not just selling them, but getting people to pay for the construction of them that were like mine owners, which were generally landowners. The early ones were, to suck water out of mainly deep coal mines. So it was the haves that are already the haves that were doing the early Industrial Revolution, most assuredly. But as time goes along, you have-nots become haves within one generation, within one person's life. In Marx's lifetime, but it's more like the Elon Musks, the Steve Jobs, the I keep forgetting his name, the Microsoft guy or guys, There are still, but they were, few and far between at that time as well. But definitely many were flowering out. And so wealth creation that I don't think Marx takes anywhere into account in any of either his, because you got to split Marx up into two things. One, his analysis of history, which is badly wrong, and two, his economics as well as his governmental structure, kind of thing of what we normally say Marxism, but I also, when I say Marxism, can mean his historical hypothesis, synthesis, that whole bullshit that he's very wrong on. I've known, and many modern conservatives buy into Marxist historical views and without buying into his political views, but they're both very wrong. Economies are not the main drivers of historical events. They are a factor, because without the economy that Britain had in the 18th century, it couldn't afford its navy. I mean, it needs that economy to have the navy, but the economy is not the reason to have the navy, meaning like to protect its trade. No, the reason to have the navy is to protect the nation from invasion, primarily France, but also the Dutch and the Spanish even tried to invade. You go back to Elizabeth, the whole, Armada, and then 1708. There's another attempted Spanish invasion that a very small part of it shows up, but the main part doesn't. But they try. I mean, they're trying to get out of port and they're trying to get up there, but it fails to go. So, protecting from the French, the Spanish, the Dutch primarily. That's why you have the big navy. And then, it's also deployed out to protect commerce, too. But it isn't the economy that they're protecting, it's the nation. And, that's just the economy. No. Britain's drive in the 18th century and before, but I studied the 18th century very in depth, again, while I was in Britain. Studying that was the 18th century, was religion. And was not so much trying to spread their version of Protestantism, but defending it against, the Spanish Armada, which was justified by religious crusade against heretics, or by later French or later Spanish. Dutch was more of just politics and whatnot, because they were also Protestant. But so the main drive for the French and the Spanish, why people were dying, was over religion and trying to free the English people from rule by the heretics and get them back to the one true religion. And if you believe, I'm not saying you should believe, but if you believe there is only one true religion, and if you don't believe in that one true religion, you cannot go to heaven, well, then it's worth killing people. And Britain did have laws against Catholic priests. You could not. That's why there's something called a priest hole. You could not have Catholic priests in Britain. There were laws against it that potentially could be death. So it's not just like there wasn't freedom of religion. There wasn't even freedom from religion. Later in the 18th century, they may not have been enforcing it so hard, and Catholics were always known to exist, but it depends on how much they were repressed. But definitely Catholic priests weren't. So in Elizabeth's time or in George the whoever's time, it wasn't like, the Catholics could enter the marketplace of ideas and spread their Catholicism openly. No, they would be potentially killed. I mean, death penalty was something on the table, not just if you were resisting. Most likely you would just be thrown out of the country or in prison for a while and then thrown out of the country if you were a Catholic priest being found. But it could be a death sentence. Even if it is legally the death sentence, often they would just still throw you out of the country or something, because they weren't mostly that cruel in Britain. But if you were a particular nuisance and been caught multiple times or something, you very well could face the hangman or the block. So you very well, if you believe that, these people the average person are being misled, like I believe communists lead the people, like we're talking about. And you can't go and preach your ideas. It may be worth a jihad or a crusade to free the people from their tyranny of Protestantism. So this is why Marx's analysis that it's all economics, or the primary driver is economics. Now, I will put definitely in the top 10 and maybe even the top 5 economics, reasons for wars and conflicts, but definitely not the primary one. I would put that as some sort of belief ideology. Marxism, Leninist Marxism is a religion in that it specifically says there is no God, and that is a belief. I know, including some people here may say it's a fact, but I would say it is a belief that there is no God. And I'm not saying you should believe it. That's just your belief. And other people believe there is. I'm not trying to push any religion here, mine or anybody else's. I'm just talking about it. So, so all the people, religion's the cause of all wars, so we should fight against religious people. No, that's your religion, is fighting against people who believe in God and want to use violence to fight against that. So, and there are other things like security that people fight wars over. So that I both security and like belief are things that I would put historically all the way back are stronger than economy. So I believe Marx is just wrong. But having people like him supported to do studies, to do philosophical things that, unlike studying for a technology that would change the world, studies for things that aren't going to, in and of themselves benefit somebody else economically. So it's a charity kind of thing. I'm not against that, but it just Marx. Okay. And yes, okay. Let's continue down here. Thomas, hello, Thomas, if I hadn't said hello. Hi, I believe very rich entrepreneurs live of credits. Best way to avoid paying taxes makes sense for them. Oh, yes. I'm not going to get into how I know and what not. I know I've mentioned some of the stuff, but at the Long Beach Airport in California, there are several businesses that, to my understanding, are wholly owned by one or a very small group of people, like a family or something, that have jets. Oh, and trust me, the hangar, the very large hangar that has multiple private jets in it, the hangar itself is multi-million dollars. Okay, multi-million-dollar hangar. However much the jets are and the staff to maintain them. Now, I do think it is something of a business that I do think they do let those planes out to, rental. But from my observation of them, it doesn't seem like often or all the time. So I don't know how much, if at all, but they set it up as a business that may be running at a loss. So that way the business owns the planes and the business covers the cost of the maintenance and all that stuff. So it's not like rich person earns money and then they themselves own the plane and the hangar and all that stuff to then, but taxed on all the money, all the way along and everything else. So they set it up as a corporation and may or may not have a profitable business there. And so this way they sort of avoid taxes on things. So there's definitely that, which I don't think is wrong or immoral or not just illegal, because they're obviously trying to work within tax laws and whatnot, but is not necessarily wrong or like I say, immoral or anything on that scale. It's just, the way of structuring stuff in our society to make it affordable even for those level of people that are obviously, they may not have $1 billion, but they've got $100 million or more or something. They're not just a minor millionaire who owns the thing. And as far as I know, and no, I haven't looked at their records or detailed up, but my understanding it's not set up as like an active, a very active charter airline company. It's just sort of like, they'll sort of kind of allow their stuff out when they're not using it. And that can, cover some of the costs. So yeah, they try to operate with that within those kind of things, and not just within their business. So, and yes, thank you, Toy Jet, again, if I haven't already, for the happy 4th of July. Okay, and yes, Thomas is saying happy 4th of July. I almost forgot, yes. I'm going through in heaven. I know I said hello to Heavenly Spirit of Psalm, and he says happy 4th of July. And let's see what IKB. An average farm in the UK probably has over $1 million in assets once you count the land, machines, and animals. Try buying something for a cow and 2 sheep at a big box store. Absolutely. Well, where I live, I've got rather near me, and then one sort of far away, a store chain, which I will take to some of my friends who are coming later this year to where I live. A store chain called Cal Ranch. Cal stands for something, I forget. 3 letters, C-A-L. And it's a big box store. And they sell animal feed and other things. So I have big box store that has, you can buy chickens, live little chickens and, hatchery type chickens at the big box store. They also have a gun department too that you can buy guns and ammo. But yeah, I mean, buy 50-pound bags of animal feed, as well as there's a feed store, that's just a feed store. That's a sort of a warehouse that you buy feed at. So yeah, around within easy driving distance of where I am, there's a single owner operator type. They got multiple employees, but a one-off feed store, and then this chain that goes in multiple states that is sort of a ranching and farm type supply store. That's a big box store is the way it's set up. But yeah, you can buy stuff for sheep and goats at the big box store, and you can buy chickens. They got them in the thing there. I haven't seen like goats at the store when I've gone in there, but they definitely got live chickens and whatever that you may be feeding to some predatory. If you have reptiles or something, that you may be buying these live chickens to feed to your predators. But yeah, no, they're around. Big box stores, ranch, it's set up more for ranching. Not that they do have farming stuff, because out here in the West we do farming as well as ranching. And both ranches and farms can both have things like cattle, cows, steers, and bulls, as in bovines, what we generally refer to as cattle. But in theory, cattle could be other things too. But yeah. So yes. And air conditioning, yes, is great. And Thomas says, Japanese occupied Germany more than they occupied the U.S., I believe, the law system, among others, i.e. the law system. Oh, copied, not occupied. Why did I say copied German more than they copied the U.S., I believe, the law system, among others. I'm not sure about that. I don't know when and what you're talking about. I know prior to World War II, their main European ally had been Britain, until that was going sour over China and their competition, because it was sort of the Anglo-Japanese alliance against primarily Russia. And of course, Japan goes into World War II to get the German territories out in the Pacific. China goes, not into World War II, into World War I. China goes into World War I to get, Tsingtao, or however you pronounce it, the sort of German colony that there's a siege and a battle there, and China gets that. Australia just goes to World War I because they're part of the British Empire, but they also pick up other German colonies, particularly Papua New Guinea, or what is currently labeled as such. But yeah, I don't know. In essence, my understanding is the Japanese Constitution is primarily written by America. The current one is primarily written by Americans under MacArthur, and I don't know. And it's been a month or more. I was on the Discord server for Dr. Alex Clark, a very good, knowledgeable and thinker about affairs of the Navy, including historical and modern, and a bit more connected and a bit more detailed than Drat Chinafil, who's another good historical Navy guy. But Clark, some of his people I was talking to, and some of his people that are around his orbit that's in his Discord server, in which IKB is one who pointed me towards it, and he was there at the time. They were literally talking about missing minutes, of meetings with between some of MacArthur's staff and some of the Emperor's people. I forget exactly the whatever issue over something, and that they were trying to find out what happened to those things, and so looking at it in a very detailed historical way. So I do believe the Japanese had input, and maybe serious input, into the Constitution that they currently, and it's been modified, and they're trying to modify, and they have, and continuing to try to modify it, particularly in the, not to want to do aggressive war, but to be able to go to war to, like defend, like if a Japanese ship is attacked by the Houthis, maybe even, captured by the Houthis, the Japanese can legally, under their constitution, send out a commando team to rescue the ship and the crew or something, They're not looking, I don't think, to start reconquest, but starting to have a more official army and navy and air force beyond just sort of a policing self-defense force, purely defensive, but to be able to react to attacks, whether it's China or North Korea or just somebody like the Houthis, or Somali pirates out somewhere, that they could deploy navies or other assets to be something of an aggressive but reaction type force to aggression against them out in the world again. And so they're modifying some of their constitution, and I don't know exactly their current status of that. But I was pleasantly surprised at how much detail they were looking into some of these things. So yeah, I just don't know in any detail, but those people would know what. Okay, are you actually playing the game, or you? Well, I have been playing a game quite a bit, and then I paused to talk about what I was thinking of it. Okay, and Thomas, between 250 and 500,000 Americans regularly use horse-drawn carts, most of them Amish. Yeah, the Amish. Okay, the Amish, the Amish. I don't know which. I think more Amish is more correct, but that isn't an American indulgence, because they cannot survive without protection. Oh, they are not a drain on the economy in the sense that they do not, I think as a collective group, I don't know about any one individual, but a collective group do not rely upon any government assistance or aid. I'm not talking about going to the emergency room or something like that. I'm talking, any others. Those that live the lifestyle, because there are those that reject the lifestyle, but those that live the lifestyle, they do not get government assistance. But they could not live in a world that did not protect them, because they don't want to defend themselves. They don't want to use anything modern. So yes, we have those people, but they are hobbyists, like a ranch that has horses. And they recently, where I live, the rodeo was in town here in Arizona. So those are obviously hobbyists and they may be professional in that they're making money at the rodeo. I didn't go. I want to go sometime just to watch it, but I'm not a big fan. They may make money at it because there's prizes and whatnot. And, it fills up. There's lots of people going and watching. They sell tickets. So it's a profitable endeavor because it's not government supported. But I would say all of the Amish, all of their lifestyle is hobbyist lifestyles that they support themselves with, but they do it because they want to be that way, not because they can't afford a pickup truck or a mechanized farm equipment of some. They will use 19th century, animal-drawn farm equipment, that you pull along that can harvest something or plow multiple fields at a time. They're just non-powered, non-electric or internal combustion engine or steam engine powered, but muscle powered or wind powered or water powered equipment, yes, but beyond that, no. And that's all by choice and not by necessity of knowledge or capability. But okay. We also like horses. They are delicious. Now, we hate that here in America. And I know in Europe there are people that still eat horses. No. America has never, I'm not saying in desperate need, some soldiers or somebody's trapped somewhere and they have to kill some horses or whatever and eat them. Absolutely. But we think in America, generally speaking, we think eating a horse is like eating a dog. We think of them as animal companions, not as food. Some people have animal companions of cows or bulls or steers. They do. And won't eat those particular ones. Most of them, though, still will eat other cows or animals. They're not all vegetarians or something, but yeah, we don't eat our horses. Okay, the silage we've already answered. Mileage or silage is chopped and bagged. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, isn't Japanese law and admin more French inspired than German? Hilo, repeat. I don't know that it is. Oh, and he corrects himself. Silage. But silage is also, which I haven't noticed ever on American, and I've seen American farms driving by on the road in the South or the Northeast. Never visited a farm in those parts of the world. And never seen any documentary evidence of, because silage, my understanding is you sort of cover it and it sort of cures, if you will. I've never known that to happen in America. It very well might, but and definitely I have not. Where I've been out on farms and lots of Granddad's ranch, but lots of other ranches too, back in the day, and drive by them locally where I am now very often, and you can see a big chunk of it. I don't know of them ever using what I would understand to be silage. Definitely dried grasses, because everything out here gets dried. And more like bales of hay that may be raised locally, but yeah. Okay, and continue on. Eastern Washington does have a lot. Okay, Eastern Washington State does have that. Again, I've only been up to I've personally been up to coastal Washington State, and that was more than 30 years ago, back before the crazies took over. I mean, there's still hippies up there and that kind of thing, but and that was all just coastal Washington State. So I don't know that region. People, America's big, and within, shall we say, Anglo-ness, I know there's some French down in Louisiana, but within Anglo-ness, it's very diverse. And I'm not talking about some Italian-American community or some Chinese-American community. I'm talking about overall the states are still basically, even with all the people coming in, and Somalis and Haitians, we're still in essence an Anglo-based culture here, and it can be whatever it is, whether it's your type of pizza, not just pizza, but types of pizza or whatever. It is diverse in different regions, and unless you actually go, not necessarily live for years, but go spend weeks and traveling around a particular state, there's a lot you just can't know about in America, unless, like I say, you truly travel around and truly immerse yourself in all the regions. Okay, use heavily in feedlots and dairy operations. Okay, there are dairy operations definitely down in the Southwest here. At least the feed stuff that I've seen driving by, the big sort of things that before you see them, you smell them from animal shit, or, cow shit. You don't do that at a ranch or at a normal farm, but at some of these fattening places, but they may also be dairy places. They're literally sort of, You smell them before you get near them. And driving, I'm talking on the highway with your windows rolled up with your air conditioner on, you still smell them. Just a few that I've known of. But some of those very well could be more doing something like that. Because there's no way to... But even there, I'm thinking, yeah, I remember big piles of hay that have tarps thrown over them. Just to, not have them spoiled by rain or whatever. Because it does occasionally rain. So, yeah, most of that, at least I think hay. But, I've not worked in that industry. Okay. And back to Thomas here. Initially, Japan looked at the French law systems, but shifted later to German laws, seeing it would fit Japanese needs very well. Okay, and I still don't know your time frame on what you're saying for that. I'd be interested as sort of a year, rough date, pre-World War II, post-World War II, for that German law stuff. That'd be interesting. And greed and envy, yes, you're reinforcing. I see that. Japan occupied Germany in the 19th century, followed by U.S. in the 20th century. Oh, copied Japan. Okay. Yes. Well, yeah, it's U.S. My understanding is I think the current stuff is all on the U.S. They don't love the poor. They just hate the rich. I would agree with that. But I know IKB is greed and envy. And is it just... there's, what is it, 7 deadly sins, and I'm terrible at memorizing. But, one of the 7 deadly sins is pride, and we have Pride Month. But it's also greed and envy are also sort of sins. And I don't think, now, people have their moments, but I don't think I've ever envied somebody in the sense... I mean, definitely that, I wish I had that sports car that I see some rich person driving. Yes, that. But never in my thoughts in my life that I can remember, so it's not a significant event if it's ever happened, that I've ever thought they shouldn't have the sports car or whatever it is, the mansion or something, because I don't. I don't know if that's an American thing, because we believe we can achieve it. Not that everybody is going to achieve it, but it can be achieved. Or whether that's a personal thing to me. But I've never thought somebody shouldn't own something because I can't. Now, I may be envious in the thing that I wish I had one too. Also, additionally, than them having it. And I'm not talking like the Mona Lisa painting. I know it's in the French, or supposedly in the French, the Louvre. But, it's not even that it's a one-off historical painting, but, something that is, nice paintings or something that could be painted. I've never had that thought that they shouldn't have it because I don't. I've never thought that I can think of in my life. And I do remember, and it was mostly an excuse, though I think there is a bit of communist behind it, the logic, that teachers would go, some kid with gum in their mouth, well, did you bring enough for the whole class? Well, then no, you can't have it. Mainly, they just didn't want students chewing on gum while they're teaching, which I don't know why that's such a distraction. Yeah, if you're blowing bubbles and whatnot, I could sort of see, but still. So you got to bring enough. And so periodically, just a few times I remember, not specific events, but I do know that somebody does bring enough for the whole class, so they hand it out to the whole class to sort of go, F you to the teacher. This is like an elementary school or whatever. And within the class. Now, I grew up in a world which nobody was wearing school uniforms. So definitely, and it was all, when I was growing up, all sort of middle class and above. So no one was, basically no one was like poor enough to have, worry about do they have clothing. Oh, there was definitely who has the cool clothing, certainly. But, and definitely sort of, not in my generation, participation trophies, but when the teacher's organizing, a PE kind of thing, every child gets to play, not just those that are best at it or whatever. They all get to play. So they all get to participate in whatever thing. And not back in my day, there was definitely the idea of winners and losers, or who did the best painting and got an award or whatever. It wasn't everybody got an award for participating, but everybody could participate. So it wasn't, at least through, early elementary type school where you're forming, at least other than the sort of the gum thing, there really wasn't more than just not having special privileges for somebody unless they achieved it. It's like, oh, hey, the reward is to what, the person who wins the whatever gets some sort of reward or whatever, whether it's just a little fake ass trophy or whether it's to go home early or something. I don't know what it might be. There was definitely that kind of stuff. There wasn't an indoctrination, again, when I was growing up at that level, and I'm talking early levels, of communism, of everything got to be equal. Everything has to be fair. I mean, a few things, everybody gets to participate. Everybody gets, crayons to draw something and whatnot. No one, make sure everyone has crayons so they can, and piece of paper. I'm thinking like in elementary school or, early stages. So in that sense, yeah, just because everybody in the class gets to participate. But beyond that, and it wasn't like everybody, has, you can't wear your cool shirt or jacket or something because other people don't have a cool one. No, it's just everybody gets to, wear what you have. Or, people's bicycles. Some people had nicer bikes than other people had, or new bikes, or other people with used bikes or whatever. And now where I grew up, all kids could basically have a bike. That was never, meaning that was never like the government. It was just, in a middle class environment that some sort of bike was, parents would be able to afford something for their kid. Other parts of the U.S. back then, maybe not, but where I grew up. So there wasn't any sort of, at least that I can, even looking back, detect communism in, other than just the basic sort of American idea of fairness, sort of like everybody, we get a fair trial, or the police should treat everybody fairly, or the government, should treat people fairly instead of special privileges for special people kind of thing. Nothing beyond that I can detect growing up in schools, other than a basic sense of fairness. But it wasn't like, again, I want to emphasize, it wasn't like somebody couldn't have a, special things like the cool lunch pail, because they used to do, I don't know if they still do lunch boxes with, TV show kind of themes on them or whatever, I guess modern day Hello Kitty or something, I don't know, that they may put on. It was never like an attempt to limit where later on, and I don't know about here where I'm in Arizona, but California definitely moved to school uniforms very much on the idea of communism, in the sense that everyone's dressed in the same basic uniforms, at least up through elementary school, and I think it's moved into some maybe a bit higher, to sort of make everyone equal. And it's everyone equal, and unlike what I understand in Japan from my limited knowledge of it, is different schools have different levels of, and the parents have to pay for it, nice school uniforms from nicer, richer schools or whatever. And it was sort of individual schools have different pride in their uniform versus other uniforms. No, in California, it's every school has the same uniform. Not this school has this uniform, that school has this other uniform. And so they, a group identity. No, it's California became the sort of communistical leveling. Every student wears the uniform because wealth inequality, because some people are poor and some people are rich, and we don't like that. But back when I'm growing up, so I don't know how much is indoctrination and that envy. Okay, came for the HOI IV Holiday Punch, stayed for the discussion. I'm going to get back to playing once I get through the chat, so we'll get back to playing. There is no discussion if only one person. No, I'm interacting with this, and I do monologues. And hello, Venticure, what's up? Well, I'm talking about the world and going to get back to playing the game here in a moment. It is because he actually talks to us when he's done with his point and reads. Yes, I don't leave any chat behind. Fortunately, I would love to be popular enough that I couldn't keep up with the chat, just because that's success. Not that I don't want to keep up with the chat, but I do like that I can. Barely read any chats yet. Yeah, okay. War of the Fourth. Hello, Blix the Wolf. How you doing? I think I got that right. I would recommend the TV show Poldark to understand the situation in Britain in the late 17th. And I have seen some of that, IKB. I like the first season of it. Was there more than one season? And it's been more than 10 years since I've seen it. I'm pretty sure it's that old. It's been a while. Is it set in Wales, if I remember? It's been a long time. But yes, I have seen late 17, early 1800s. Some of it is filmed in my hometown. Okay, cool. Happy, Jamnuska is saying, happy 250th to you Southerners. Okay, so are you north of the border up there? In America's hat. Okay, Mike Dapis? I don't know. So gaming-wise, what your thoughts on Warno Cold War, Total War, Victory, World Conflict, and lastly, Attack at Dawn, North Africa. Have you tried or looked into any of them? No, I really haven't. Sorry, I don't have any real opinions on any of those games. IKB, my understanding is that the Anglo-Japanese alliance was removed by the naval treaties. Yeah, I'm sure that was also part of the factor I wasn't thinking of, but now that you're saying it, I do see where that would be an element, that Japan being kept down would frustrate them. Because you have to realize, out in the Western Pacific, Japan was the only power that was located there. They had faced the entire Russian fleet, which was actually fairly large. However good or wasn't is another question. But it was fairly large, somewhat modern in ships, if not generally modern in ships at the time. In 1905, I believe, is the year that it, leaves the the Baltic states and goes all the way. Some little bit goes through the Suez. Most of it goes around Africa and comes up here and gets sunk here because it's trying to get up to here. So yeah, they have, of course, their fleet. Before that, they had a small squadron or whatever out here. And of course, Britain and, the U.S. with the Philippines and out here in Hawaii still has their fleet in the 19th century, or, right around there, because, they get this and Guam from the Spanish right around 1900. But, it's definitely in the region, most assuredly, and the British are definitely can move large fleets here, but Britain in any real wartime potential, with the very idea, and if we're looking at late 19th century, early 20th century, in theory, if Britain was at peace, but somehow, you're looking forward and not backward at the time. In theory, if Britain were to go to war with Japan, it could move the home fleet out there, its big, massive, its fleet, to go fight Japan. But that might be that's the moment the German Empire or the French or whoever is going to strike when the fleet is way off fighting Japan, and whoever may not have any skin in the game in whatever the conflict with Japan is, but it's at that moment that the balance of power locally has changed enough that we can, invade Britain and sign some sort of peace treaty that would limit their fleet size or something like that. So in practice, you're always going to have the home fleet. Russia is not dependent upon its home fleet for its security. Its threats are on land borders, not really naval invasions. Might be useful to stop a naval invasion. The idea that there was the Crimea War, that could land here, could land, when it's still the Russian Empire, could land around here in theory. But the real defense is not its navy, it's moving its army to deal with the naval invasion. So it could send its quote-unquote home fleet, or whatever, its primary fleet, around the world, but Britain really in practice couldn't. It could siphon off a bunch of its power, from the home fleet. Its other expeditionary navy elements, it can be sent out there, and that can be a very large force. I'm thinking, again, late 19th century, early 20th century, but it's not a local force. So the one local power, and even though they did have naval alliances like we're talking about with Britain, if Britain honors, if, say, that there's a war with Russia or France or Germany or America or whoever, and they ask for significant aid from Britain, that never does happen to my knowledge. If they ask for that aid, and because sort of the attack on the Russians was sort of an aggressive war by Japan and not purely a defensive war, they definitely saw, because Russia was down here on the peninsula, it was up at Vladivostok. This is what, Port Arthur. Is definitely moving, and we can see here, moving into the territory, expanding in. So Japan felt under threat by continual Russian buildup. They'd given up Alaska at that time, but Russia did have Alaska at one point that Japan is very aware of. So they see Russia as an expanding power. And I think, they have some territorial, because they do keep this after the war. They draw this line at the end of the Russo-Japanese War. I don't know the exact holdings prior to the beginning of the Russo-Japanese War. And Japan still claims this, and this is still unresolved by international treaties. So if Russia ever collapses just a little bit more, we might see Japan invading this territory and taking it, whether they try to take all of Sakhalin or not. That is the one thing I can see on a modern map. Japan trying to get back its territory, because it has never acknowledged that this is not its territory, and to my knowledge. And no treaty at any time that this has ever been acknowledged, this part down here has ever been acknowledged as not being Japanese territory. So that wouldn't be an aggression in the sense of they're just getting back their territory, but it might be an aggression in the sense that it is pushing out others. I don't see them trying to reconquer any of Korea. It might be a Japan-South Korea alliance against North Korea or something in the future, and retaking and fighting there, but it might increase Japanese influence in Korean affairs, but trying to unify the peninsula under a single Korean government. I don't see Japan trying to re-get Korea or Taiwan or something like that. But this is the one thing that I don't think it would upset its, Taiwan, Korea, Philippines, whoever, or the Americans or whoever, aren't really going to say, oh my God, Japan's becoming an aggressive empire again. No, I think definitely I would say the southern part, but taking even all of the island, because why not? And why is it somehow intrinsically Russian? That it's somehow core Russian territory. And if there's any other, I don't know about that, but if there's any other little islands out here, and I don't know about these currently, just where those are Russian or not, I think some of them are. So if they grabbed up some of this territory, these territories, I don't think its neighbors would conclude that Japan is on an aggressive path again. I think it just might be consolidating what they have, not necessarily as clearly theirs, but is something within their, sphere of influence that maybe should be theirs. But, and so Japan wants an ally, but realizes that whoever the ally is, including to this day, and its main ally, and if you've been following on Twitter, they lit up their sort of version of the Eiffel Tower. It's a big tower in Tokyo, and one of the bridges in American colors for the 4th of July weekend, at least, or whatever, that they're trying to, we could say, suck up to America. So it's trying to be an American ally. It knows that even if the alliance is good and close, whether it's because China has the largest navy now to the U.S., it might just look like lots of targets and not so much, a big threat. But America might not be able to, because it does keep one in Yokohama, I believe, one carrier task force, one carrier group stationed permanently there. It rotates which one is its duty station. It was the Ronald Reagan, I forget what it is now, that is home ports there with its supporting forces. But that's just a carrier group, and it's realizing, oh, that carrier group may be busy defending the Philippines when something explodes up here. And it may be a while, weeks, months, time it takes to build a few new carriers or whatever it may be, for America cavalry to come in and, ride to the rescue. Think Britain, riding the rescue in Britain World War II, in which we didn't have treaties. We do have some treaties of defense with Japan right now. I don't know the details, but we do have those. So it might take a while for overwhelming American power to show up. So it needs to some degree, and it's realizing it in the post-Cold War world, in this world that we are in, it needs better defenses to rely somewhat on its own, even though it still may want to continue a close alliance and reliance. Alliance and reliance. I want to make sure you understand that. On America, but it's not complete alliance. It's not our reliance. It's not like what Europe was trying to be. Oh, well, America will defend us. No reason for serious army. No reason for serious defense force. It's just a social experiment. We can turn the entire German army into trans. Only trans people, trans women, trans men. That's all that's allowed to serve in the army. Unless you're disabled or of a dark skin color. That's the only people allowed to serve. White straight males are legally barred from German in the army or something. That's what Europe thought it could do. It's learned it can't, but it thought it could do. Japan never thought it could do quite that extreme, but it's learning it needs to have a serious defensive ability for the first incident. So, yes. Okay, let's continue. I think it's a human thing. Some people are more hunter-gatherers than farmers. I don't see that. I don't see that repeat. I'm not saying I'm sure you're wrong, but I don't see that. Okay. And folks says to Elizabeth, I got an apartment 1 block away from work, so glad I don't need to drive. I don't know where. Oh, America is huge. I skipped this. Okay. Some of the stuff is huge. It's an understatement. Still getting used to having to drive everywhere. Yeah, and it depends on the American city. And if you are literally 1 block in an LA area, yeah, you would walk. But if you're 6 or 8 blocks, really, if you're proper Californian, you drive. I know these modern, I see these people, and I saw what looked to be 2 college-age guys that were, I think, some flavor of Asian, like maybe Filipino or something. I don't remember. I just saw them. They were whizzing by. But 2 guys. I don't know that they were gay. I mean, they didn't look particularly gay, but who knows? I mean, it's not always tattooed on your forehead. Sometimes it sort of virtually is, because of the way they behave and dress and want everybody to know that they're gay, and that's what they want to do. Okay. But these 2 guys riding on a scooter, electric powered, one of these little electric scooters, and one guy's holding onto the waist of the other guy as they're driving along, and at college age, and culturally, I couldn't imagine being seen in public riding on the back of another guy's scooter. I mean, if it was a literal emergency, maybe. But if it's just a 5-mile walk fucking home at midnight, I'm going to fucking walk home. I'm not going to ride on the back of somebody's fucking, the stand-up scooter types, if you know what I mean. Not like a little motor scooter that you sit down and ride on, but the stand-up scooter zipping along the road. These guys were, in California. What I saw. So I don't know how Asian they were in the sense of were they from the Philippines, grew up there and just going to, because it was actually near a college age. So I don't know if they're foreign students or whether they were Americans that were just of Asian descent. But either late teens or early 20s, as far as I could detect. Nobody, I don't even know if the gay guys would have done that in my day, be seen to be both beta males, that they're riding a scooter in the first place, but sharing a scooter ride. I've also seen a couple of times what I presume are boyfriend, girlfriend, but could be brother and sister, or could be just random, friends, I don't know. But a guy and a girl doing that, okay, a little more, but no, in California we drive just about everywhere. I know they try to do bikes and all this other bullshit crap, but you drive everywhere. And you know why you drive everywhere? Because you don't want to get hit by a car unless you have a car wrapped around you. Whether you're a pedestrian or you're a bicyclist or you're a scooter or you're a motorcyclist, you're just an organ donor in California. Okay? Understand that. Those guys in the scooter, they're future organ donors. They're going to be hit one day if they drive and do that enough. You don't want to walk too many places too far because you don't want to be a fucking organ donor and have somebody drive through the, ignore, don't see a red light or don't see you at a stop sign and hit you. You drive in a car, it's a defensive thing. And I don't believe Elizabeth is in California, but a good chunk. Now, there's certain urban cities that they walk across the street in the middle of the street and somehow don't get hit by cars. I don't understand it, but it's some sort of thing. Well, no, they do sometimes get hit by cars, but they just literally walk out there. But it depends on your city. But if you're not urban, whether that means suburban or rural, most all Americans drive just about everywhere they want to go. And I remember seeing, one of the British commentators who've traveled around the world to places like Zimbabwe or occupied Crimea or wherever. And very interesting stuff. He's also, his sense of being an American sometimes, that lack of, just, walk to the shops, walk to here, that he likes to do. And it's sort of his behavior pattern. That no, everybody just drives around in cars and isolates themselves in cars and gets places. Yep. And it's partially structural. Now, yeah, there are people that do live one block from your apartment or from, where you live to where you work and would walk that. But outside of certain like New York City or San Francisco where, there just isn't places to park. And even if you have places to park, it's going to be expensive because you're paying to park, that you don't have cars. But just about everywhere else, and particularly in greater LA, you drive. And it's just what we do here. And part of it is self-defense. Because we don't want to go grocery shopping 4 times a week. So we get a carload of groceries and put them in a car and drive them home instead of try to carry, multiple trips back and forth to carry your groceries to and from your home. Structurally, our society is set up different. And yes, I know that can be difficult for people who are not used to that. To see, okay, and IKB, when I was at school, there was lots of gum stuck to the bottom. Oh, yeah, oh, God, yeah, there were gum stuck. Oh, people would still chew gum. Try not to get noticed by the teacher in doing it. It wasn't, and it was no great punishment or something to just mostly make you throw it out. But yeah, there was always to be found in different, in elementary school, my experience was most of the people had their own desk because you were at that one classroom for the whole day and you had an assigned desk. But getting in junior high, or what they now call, or in some parts of America, mostly always called middle school and high school, where you rotated around, there was often gum found under the desks. Yes, most assuredly. Oh, Cornwall, that's right. About 5 seasons. Well, I did not see all 5 seasons. Can't keep up right now. I can't keep up right now. No, I'm not. Poldark he's talking about. No, I have not seen. Okay, it's cold. I thought at least it was somewhere East Coast mining whatever. I wasn't sure whether it was Wales or Cornwall, but yes. So I have seen some of it. Not all 5 seasons, maybe a season or 3 or something, because I remember vaguely whenever that there was going to be more coming at some point, and for whatever reason I lost contact with it and haven't watched anymore. But yeah, it was good. Okay, and Thomas saying, in communist hell, when you got to eat your daily bucket of poop, those either ran out of poop all the time or don't have enough buckets for everyone, so communism ain't all bad after all. Oh, yeah, so you don't always have the poop to eat. Yes. Yes, I get you. They could have sold the raw stuff to capitalists and bought something edible, but they really wanted to send raw stuff to the big factories that turned it into poop. Yep. Okay, people don't need edible stuff. They exist to be construction material of history, not useless eaters, comrade. Yes. Construction, yes. Okay, play in China. Hello, I presume Chinese person. Now, we're not playing the Republic of China right now. We can get a quick look at China defending against the Japanese. So there's China. There's some of the other cliques, including the evil commies. And yes, communism is evil. Then the reorganized national government of the Republic of China, basically the collaborationists, and that. But we're playing as Germany right now. I walked 14 miles home from a night once because I didn't want to pay for a taxi. Well, that seems awfully far, IKB. That seems awfully far. I did get stuck one evening on the other side of Edinburgh, and I was walking back, and it was after the buses had stopped running, and I didn't have a rental car at that time. So not every time. Normally, if I was just there for a short time, once I'm leaving Edinburgh, because it's again hard to park and expensive to park. When I lived there, I had a long-term rental for a vehicle, so I was driving places. I was being oh well, do you want to spend the night? No, it's just an hour or two to get from sort of Oban area back to Edinburgh. I'll just go home, because I wasn't going to be there the next morning. If it was like I was going to be, and I had open standing invitations for a few people. Hey, if I nobody else is staying over, you can spend the night here at whatever place. I'm not going to specify who and what. You can stay here if you want. But unless I was going to want to be there the next day, I was always just driving home to Edinburgh at night when I had a car. So being a very Californian and just driving wherever. But when I wasn't, one time I got stuck on the far side of Edinburgh. So it was not too many. It definitely wasn't 14 miles, but it was a few miles, and it was after whenever the buses stopped running. And I saw a big line of taxi cabs. Great! At the Edinburgh train station. Great! Nope. They wouldn't take me. They were all waiting for some train to come in, late night, and they're all stacked up. And I guess it was some sort of union thing, because I was offering them money. And it's somebody at the back of the line, outside of the train station. You just want to take me and go? And I'm offering you, and I'll pay a little extra. Not a lot, but it was a short trip, and you'll be back here in drive time at Edinburgh at night. There's no traffic. You'd probably be back in 10 minutes, if not 15 minutes. And I was willing to pay the taxi fare. I vaguely, just from where I was to some hotel that I wasn't terribly familiar with, I knew I could find it walking across town, but it wasn't so I was never lost. But what street is the best way to get there? If you know Edinburgh, it's not all grid squares or whatever. It was going from Old Town to across New Town to whatever, if you sort of know, to where my hotel was. Nope. And whether you want to go communism or just guildism, that they're all sort of whatever. It was against the rules, apparently, that they couldn't go take a taxi fare and be back before whatever. No, they were all lined up, and no one wanted to, even the guy in the last place in line, who was way outside, didn't want to give up his spot or something, or if he did that, somehow the other ones would beat him up or something. I don't know. But they wouldn't take my money, so I continued walking. That was about the halfway point of the trip or so. Oh, and I saw some other taxis driving around, but I keep trying to hail them and they wouldn't stop. So either they were already on... I understand if you're already on a call. You know, like, oh, go pick up somebody at wherever, and or they already had somebody, you know, in their taxi. And taking them some. I understand either that. Either you're on a call that you're going to go pick up somebody, or you have somebody in your taxi. And there wasn't many, but I was seeing a few of that late at night. I wasn't trying to bum a ride from a, you know, just a average person. Oh, and Uber and all those things did not exist back then. Just flat out. It was just taxis. So, yeah, you know, culture shock kind of thing. You don't want money. Interesting. I don't believe that would happen in America. I mean, they got their you know, set rates and whatnot that they got to do. And like I say, if they're already on a call or whatever, they got that commitment. But just waiting. And it wasn't, they weren't actively loading people at the other end. They were waiting for the train. And I talked to the guy. We're waiting for the train to come in. It'll be here shortly. And we're going to, oh, okay. You know, and, well, we'll be, no, they just, I mean, they'd explain why they weren't going to take me because they're waiting for this train or whatever. But, and so I knew I wasn't going to move them off of the position, but, and they were being friendly enough. It wasn't like they were being super rude or anything, but no, didn't want money bad enough. So, why not kilometers? I don't know. Repeat. I was quite drunk that night. Yeah, I understand. Miles, yes. Trying capitalism on a Europort is the first mistake. Well, I would have thought taxi drivers were go-getter type people, and that a fare is a fare, and if I was willing to tip or whatever whatever constitute paying a bit more, you know, pre-setting up. Well, if you give me a £2 or £5, and this is back in the 90s, so money actually meant something then. Tip and I'll take you, or something, you know, above whatever the fare was going to be. And if I, set a price, you know, that's predetermined tip kind of thing. I just, you know. And no, it wasn't, you know, I'm not like Elon Musk or something. How many $100 bills do I have to give you to go? No, it was, you know, something like tip extra or whatever, and, you know, if they wanted to specify before going. Okay, let's get back to playing the game. Lum really likes to see me play the game and not talk. Okay, so we are assaulting here. We're about ready to collapse one division. But will we hold out long enough? Oh, we caught one division, and now there's just a mountain division here of however many brigades, I don't know. Okay, and now we've moved up here. We've shortened our lines at the front by one province, and they're counterattacking poorly. Once we settle this defense, then we'll see about shortening the line there. Well, they're both sending people in and out. I know I have gaps in the line here, which may be a little bit of an issue, but why would the AI want to send more forces into the pocket? Yeah, like I say, not the best AI. Oh, well, hold on. Just one division there for the cavalry, and we're going to send you up and around like that for future operations. Okay, good. Maybe we can... We're going to attack here to pin these two divisions. And we're going to support the attack there with that one infantry division. You join that attack. Make sure it's at least more chance of being successful. You guys get out of the swamp. We don't need you in the swamp. But we have recently acquired all that territory. So we have just one deep pocket there left. 5 divisions there. Punch in. They're falling back. Fine. At least we are mostly moving up down here. You support that. Let me get multiple. Axis of advance. And yeah, I keep thinking about capitalism on Europor. Yeah, and I understand there's cultural differences, but I was, as you guys mostly know from the logo and whatnot, I'm of Scottish descent. And this may not be 100% true, but it is said that copper wire was invented by 2 Scotsmen who reached down and tried to pick up the same penny. And drawing it out, creating copper wire. Go, wow, we can make lots of money with copper wire. But my cultural experience, including at that time with Scots, they valued money. But yeah, I guess maybe that's more Scots Americans, those that want to. Because I did have another a friend, not maybe close friend, but a good friend who was, from way out here, out on the Isles. And one of his comments, not entirely false, not entirely true, was, there's 5 million peoples in Scotland. That was roughly the population back then, and it was mostly, at those days, all Scottish. And we're not just talking about not people from the third world, but also not Euro people. This was before the EU came in existence. So it was Scots. 5 million Scots, they grow up, 5 million Scots and they leave, and then they grow up another 5 million Scots and they leave, another 5 million. And he was definitely an entrepreneurial type, always trying to work on businesses and business opportunity type things. And he left Scotland because he knew, and this was back in the sort of early mid-90s, and so how bad it's gotten since then, he knew that he would have no chance. And he was, I think, in his sort of mid-30s at the time. He would have no chance at being an entrepreneur in Scotland. It just was whatever, just wasn't going to happen. If he wanted to go get a job somewhere and just work that job for the rest of his life, or a similar sort of job for the rest of his life, he could do so. But if he ever wanted to be a success at anything, he had to get out of Scotland. He loved Scotland. He actually would send money back to relatives who continued to learn, because he did speak Gaelic. He was, like, again, from way out here in his, I don't know if quite his first language. I think his primary language was English, but he did speak Scots Gaelic fluently. And he was, his nieces and nephews, he would just minor enough amounts of money, but if they kept up their Gaelic studies, he would give them some money as a reward. Because this is when I was very active in the Scottish culture stuff. That's how I got to know him. Very active in promoting that kind of stuff up. So he loved Scotland and he loved Scottish things. And I think he liked living in California. But if he thought he could be an entrepreneur, I think he would have preferred to stay in Scotland. But so, yeah, if you want to be successful, you got to leave. You can't stay. Or if you become slightly successful, you've got to leave because they won't tolerate it. They will do everything they can, culturally, governmentally, whatever it is, to suppress that success. How you support that. I wish you could tell it to support an attack prior to launching an attack, but whenever I've inquired about that in the past, nope, not on the plan. Okay, they're attacking into here, so what we're going to do is, with these 4 divisions, counterattack that way. Hopefully, shift the odds. These 3 will attack there. These 5 will attack here to support. Attempt at the river crossing. They're now attacking this way. Let's support that, and let's support this. One more pocket, even a small one, would be nice. Now they escaped 1 division out. Yeah. They'll organize, but just join it to put more pressure on them. Join. They're retreating, they're advancing. You guys move up. Okay, armored division, go. Go. So yeah, cultural discrepancies, changes, sometimes I just don't get. Okay, back down here. They are much weaker now than they were. So, not as weak as I might like, but now to keep them from retreating back, we will attack there. Getting just another. Okay. Factories are coming online. We're going to increase our truck production. I know Arno, if he's still around, might want me to do more Tigers, but I need trucks, artillery, and support equipment that I am negative on. That's the only things I'm negative on. How am I doing for aircraft? Fighters, technical bombers. Not so great. Close air support enough, but I don't think I'm going to. Well, maybe heavy fighters. Let's see. Okay, well, and then let's also see about. Let's go to air. Okay, we're up here now. So what we need to do is let's go back here. Yes, we have that airport, and it's relatively comfortable in ours. Area 600 airplanes. Okay. 1,600 airplanes. Okay, it's a pretty big airfield. Yeah, I can maybe move these as a group, but I think we'll just... And yes, I should be paying more attention to this. Hopefully all of this will be enough to change air cover. Right now we still got some fighting way back in here, but we can get most of these guys forward, and I don't think we're going to see much in the way of... Okay, that's running supply missions. Ground support. Okay, where do we have forward air bases? Here. We'll move both here, and they're going to continue to fight in that environment. Okay. Continue to fight in Ukraine. Very good. These guys here. We don't need them way back here. Let's for the moment, I think we can move them to there. Yes, I know we're fighting nearby. You're overstressed. Although those are the ones that are moving good. Fighters. These up here. We can keep those over the lower Baltic. They're all moving. Those guys, I think, moving. Okay. Yeah. We'll leave them there in their anti-shipping operations. Okay, well that should help get the, well, okay, here. Oh, I think that's good. The fall of Leningrad. Oh boy, we just got Leningrad. Okay, quickly reoccupy that. We'll send 2 divisions there. Great. We will be pushing north once we get organized, but some of that will be supply will be able to come right into there. So that will help this whole area for supply. Because we don't, well, we do have that, but it'll connect up with railways here soon. But this will be our main, obviously, supply hub, and it can be done via ships. So that'll be great to hold that. And if we can hold again, I will try to push up to help the Finns out, but I need to move you further forward because I want to pincer this off. But no, we're not doing base access to the high ties. Okay, 2 subs down, another sub down, so that's 3 down. And out here, oh, inconclusive. Okay, we're battling them. Yes, we are. Just in case we do break through. As well as just helping that one attack. It looks pretty promising. Okay, we're going to send 3 armored divisions to fight there and hopefully surround that out. Yes, we're now through, so those armor units are coming in to shift the balance. You guys deal with that pocket you're holding. Okay, it looks like we can move up them. So we did cut that off. Very good. They're going to move into here. Let's move trucks as well as one of the infantry divisions that way. Hold this gap closed. These guys hopefully hold that air base. Denying it to the enemy, of course. Again, and we're dealing with back at the air situation here. Okay, well, we don't need the air here at all, so let's, I mean, we're using some ground support there, but let's move you up over Belarus, and you can stay there for a moment. Okay, where is the other fighter? Belarus. Okay, yellow at least. Good. Fly running to there. Need to get... Those are just out of it. Need more trucks, more trucks, more trucks. How behind are we on trucks? 1,300. Okay, that doesn't look good.
Befehle! Ausrücken! Ausrücken!
Start the flanking push. You know what I'm going to do? I think, what, are they here? Yes. Okay, I think with now getting Leningrad, we're going to be in a much better supply situation. So let's move both of you down here, and then supply down here, I think, is where I want the supply to be more so. You two attack that way. You two attack up that way as well. Okay, now we're just down to there, so crush them. You can start going east. Crush the pocket. That's a lot of military power that's going to be destroyed with that. Well, guys, I loved hanging out with you. And no, I don't want to load. Cancel. Back. I want to save. Gang. Okay. And happy 4th of July. I think America is an overwhelming force for good on this planet. Not that you gotta like everything America does, either internally or externally, but I think we are a huge net positive on the planet, and I hope we continue to be so. I am not an isolationist, but I'm not also a join every wars person either. Somewhat of a balanced viewpoint, at least I think so. So, yes, happy 4th of July. I really wish everyone well. I will be back tomorrow with more War Thunder. Probably going to be playing American tanks. Just, I know it's will be the 5th of July by then, but sort of in celebration of the 4th. I know if Dino or whoever doesn't have American vehicles, it's fine. If you don't have them, you can play some other nation. But we're going to at least try to focus on America to some degree. So show up tomorrow for War Thunder, and still it's not until the end of this month that I think I have my next Slytherin or Matrix stream, so not there. So tomorrow we should be back for more. So like, subscribe, share, whatever. Love to have a few more people hanging out with me. It's fun. So thanks everyone. I'm not going to call out everyone a name, but now thank you. But thanks for hanging out. See you all next time.